Welcome to the Temple of Divine Dance. That was quite haunting. Thank you, Frank. Welcome, everyone. Looks like we'll have a small group. I think thank you for your courage in showing up to this day. When you saw Church of Divine Dance, I didn't know if you knew what you were getting into. Don't worry, it won't be too scary. Welcome to the Unitarian Church. Is anybody here for the first time? Possibly, yeah. We've been here for 117 years, and this church was made from solid kauri, native timber, by Auckland Unitarians. Quite a historic building. And the opening words today are from Miss Ruth St. Denis, who we're celebrating. Today is her birthday, and she's known as the grandmother of the Dances of Universal Peace, which is what we're going to do today. She inspired the founder of the dances. She was a poet, a mystic, a dancer, and quite interesting life. There's a picture of her, I don't know if you can see it, and I'll pass the book around later, the pictures of her. She was quite, and I'll talk a little more later. In her words, "It is the function of the divine artist in the temple to radiate in terms of beauty. Thus, our ministry is primarily an experience of joy, and only secondarily brings its inevitable results of healing and regeneration." So she's about to radiate the soul's joy and beauty. You get healing and regeneration as a byproduct. That's not the main purpose. So let's begin by greeting each other with peace and joy. We're going to start with an opening dance from the Jewish tradition called Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat is the Jewish Sabbath day, and Shalom means peace. So peace to each other, and peace to this world, and peace on this year. So I think we're going to move the chairs back. We're not going to need these so much. So I'll play it for you. And then my friend Gavin, where's Gavin?
Yeah.
Come on. I'm going to play it for you first, and then Gavin's going to play it while I show you the dance, okay? So as you get it, you can sing along. It goes, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shalom, Shabbat, Shalom. Let's come into a word of small circle. Shabbat, Shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shalom, Shabbat, Shalom, Shabbat, Shabbat, Shalom, Shabbat, Shalom, Shabbat, Shabbat, Shalom. And then we have this little interlude where we go, bim, bom, bim, 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 bom, bim, 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 bom, ah, la, 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 bim, bom, bim, 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 bom, bim, 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 bom. Try with it, ready? Okay, now you've got the song. I'll show you the dance. The dance is really easy. All you do is we're going to hold hands, and we're going to, I'll show it to you first, so you'll know. Basically, we're going to step together 4 slow steps, and then 8 little quick steps. We just go, just watch me first. Okay? Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shalom. Keep going. Shabbat Shalom, 4 slow steps. Shabbat Shalom, and Shabbat, 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 Shalom. Then we'll go, Shabbat, Shabbat, hands up together in the center, and we step back. Shabbat, Shabbat, Shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shalom, in home. Okay? So let's try it. Holding hands, and Gavin, you want to go in the middle?
Oh, sure.
Try.
Okay.
Okay, then we can. All right. Monkey in the middle. All right, here we go. A minor. Shabbat, Shalom, Shabbat, Shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shalom, Shabbat, Shalom, Shabbat, Shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shalom. Center. Shabbat, Shalom, Shabbat, Shabbat, Shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shalom. Bim, bom, bim, bim, Shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shalom. Amen.
Shabbat shalom. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat, 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 Shalom. Shabbat, 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 Shalom. Bim, bom, bim, 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 bom. Bim, 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 bom. La, 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 la. Bim, bom, bim, 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 bom. Bim, 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 bom. How are you supposed to sing? Bim, bom, bim, 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 bom. Bim, 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 bom. Okay, clap. Bim, bom, bim, 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 bom. Bim, 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 bom. And this chalice lighting is from the Maori words, and say it in Maori, and then I'll tell you in English. E mihi ana ki te kotahi tanapure, kuia hoki te tino tomata o te aroha, te kakaro tahi me te atawa. Aore he tangata ko atu ia ia, I whakakotaitia ki na wairua tūna makato, o rātou ne, te whakatina na tanga o rātou, ko wheturangatia o te nyako arataki. We light this chalice to honor and acknowledge the one interconnected web of life which we are a part, the perfection of love, harmony, and beauty, and the spirit of guidance which constantly comes from within. So, today we are celebrating Ruth St. Denis, which today would be her 140th birthday. She was born in January 20th, 1879. And I was trying to think of a fancy title. And you all know what Terpsichorean is, right? David? I was Googling, you Google thesaurus things, and it's Terpsichorean means related to dance. Because Terpsichore was the goddess of dance in ancient Greece. And do you know what telestic means? Related to religious mysteries. So this is Church of the Divine Dance is a Terpsichorean telestic adventure, meaning related to dance and related to spirituality, religion, sacred ritual. So that's why I call it that. So in June, if some of you recall, how many people were here on June 10th when we celebrated the 50th anniversary of the Dances of Universal Peace? We did a big, you were there, a few of you, a couple of you? 50 years ago, a man named Samuel Lewis started this tradition of dancing in a circle, but not just folk dancing, dancing as worship. And one of his main people who inspired him was Ruth St. Denis. Now, on July 21st of this past year, 2018, it was her 50th anniversary of her passing, where she passed away. It was just a couple weeks after Samuel Lewis started the dances. So sort of like she inspired him. He called her his fairy godmother. That he used to remember her spirit as he would create some of these dances. And so I'll just tell you a little bit about Ruth, and then rather than talk, she was fond of saying that movement and dance is much more expressive of feeling and meaning and deep spiritual connection than words. So we'll do another little dance, which came through as I was reading one of her poems in July. These lines jumped out from the page and begged to be put into song and dance. So we will actually dance the dance that I created back in July in honor of Ruth. So Samuel Lewis mentions Ruth St. Denis about 120 times in all his letters and diaries as the main inspiration for his work in spiritual dancing. Okay, I'm just going to read you a couple of things that she wrote. At this time in history, this is back in 1879, I'll just tell you a little bit of her biography. Born in New Jersey, at 15, she was supporting her family through dance. Her mother was one of their stage mothers, took her to New York City, because she was obviously very talented and spotted in a local community theater. He was like, wow, she's the star. All the papers in New Jersey said there was this young star. She went for dancing lessons in New York, and at 15 got a role as a skirt dancer in one of those Barnum and Bailey circus type of museums. Did anybody see that Barnum and Bailey movie? Anyway, she had to, for $25 a week, she had to do 30 dances a week. She earned $25, which supported her family. It's amazing, and only 100, isn't that not 125 years ago or so? Amazing. And she started out in that vaudeville musical theater tradition, but she always had a longing for more spiritual things. Her mother studied theosophy and Christian Science, and her father was an unemployed inventor. He kept thinking his next invention was going to make them money. And the mother was a trained physician, one of the early first doctors from the University of Michigan. And she was really smart, but she had a nervous breakdown early on. So anyway, Ruth was sort of like the provider at a young age through her dancing. But very much the mother was an influence with her spirituality. Here's her writing. At this time in history, the world desperately needs the power of spiritual realization and expression to oppose the expanding forces of materialistic tendencies expressed in business without love, war without mercy, and machinery without morality. Worship of the past seems to develop the purely aesthetic qualities of mind, appreciation, comparison, evaluation, as opposed to the creative elements. However, the word creation has too often been loosely used. We may arrive at some measure of understanding by saying what creativity is not. It's not imitation, it's not development, it's not invention or rearrangement, it's not selection, adaptation, or transmutation. Creation springs from passion. And if the dance is to be the vehicle of humanity's spiritual development, it must go upstream to its own dynamic sources of power and beauty. Her parents met in a colony in New Jersey of, this is interesting, feminists, freethinkers, social radicals, abolitionists, and it was sort of one of those early bohemian communities. They were never married, which was quite a shameful thing back then. And her mother, as a physician, was into natural cures and natural medicine, as a Christian scientist, too, going for natural things. She rejected the Victorian dress of the tight bodice, and she did loose flowing, this is her mother, her loose flowing gowns, back in 1879 or so, that was quite radical. She took off her corset, and they did some work with somebody named Delsarte. Does anybody know Delsarte? He's a French artist who was talking about every gesture has meaning and has depth of feeling. And so the mother worked with Delsarte, taught Ruth that information, and Ruth took it further. Ruth's anxious relatives did not want to see her be a professional dancer, so at one point they sent her away to seminary. They paid for her to go to seminary school in New England, and the story goes that she was kicked out for arguing with the principal about the merits of theater and dance. He thought they were sinful. And she thought, I love theater and dance. They are a spiritual expression. And she ran home to mommy, and so she didn't go through seminary, but she certainly had got some ideas there. And later on, she met a young man who was a divinity student turned dancer, and he saw her perform and fell in love with her. So these two divinity students married, Ted Shawn and Ruth St. Denis, and they created a school called the Denis School of Dance in Los Angeles. And interesting enough, you may have heard of Martha Graham. She was one of their main worshipers. Martha Graham learned from Ruth St. Denis and Ted Shawn. Also, Doris Humphrey, you may have heard of Doris Humphrey, Martha Graham, Charles Whiteman. These are sort of more famous modern dancers, but Ruth St. Denis was sort of their inspiration. She also, interestingly enough, in 1911, she met Inayat Khan, who is the grandfather of the dancers. So we've got Ruth St. Denis, the spiritual grandmother. We've got Inayat Khan, who was a professor at Columbia University in New York. And Ruth, who was interested in Auckland's Eastern, where she saw a cigarette poster of Egyptian deity cigarettes with this Isis goddess sitting there, and she was transfixed. And thought, I've got to explore Eastern mysticism and Eastern traditions and bring that into my dance. And back in those days, it was quite exotic that people said she dances in bare feet. And she shows her midriff. And so she was quite the pioneer, shocking audiences. But it was also, they were sort of, in that prim and proper time, they were sort of impelled by her sensuality. But she would always have the spiritual theme, which made it okay for them to watch. So she was like virginal. Her producer, David Velasco, who was a major Broadway producer back then, dubbed her stage name Ruth St. Denis instead of her. She grew up as Ruthie Denis, and they called her Ruth St. Denis because she had this spiritual air about her. And she adopted that name for the rest of her life. In her later years, Ted Shawn was actually gay. They got married, but in those days you weren't allowed to be gay. And you know, you'd still spoil your reputation. So they were married for 15 years and developed a school. And then when they fell in love with the same man, they separated. And Ruth, but they never divorced. At 8, there's pictures you can see on the net, and there are pictures. I'll pass around this book before we do her dance. You can see some of the photos. And you can get a feel for her personality and the way she brought drama. Just kind of fun for you to pass someone in. Yeah, so anyway, they never divorced because it would have ruined the reputation of both of them. So they stayed married, but they did their separate things. And Ruth went on to found the church, her vision, the Church of the Divine Dance. And she danced in synagogues, churches, and she would do massive sort of theater pieces, you know, playing the Virgin Mary, playing Ishtar, the god, the Sumerian goddess, and Isis, and elaborate costumes that she learned from Broadway, but she would do it with these spiritual themes. And I won't go into all of her writings because I want to do the dance I want to show you. But this book is called Wisdom Comes Dancing, and it's a collection of some of her poems and her philosophies and thoughts. Very interesting. So I'm going to teach you one part of her poem called How Beautiful the Mountains. She was always striving for higher ideals. I think she would have been a Unitarian if she had lived this age, because she really liked to pick from all the traditions. I know, Vivian, you gave a talk last week about having pick and choose religion. Well, that's what she did. She didn't really follow any one path, but she would do Hindu goddesses. Her major success came from dancing Radha, which is a Hindu goddess. And she got a booking in a smoking room. They used to smoke in the theaters back in those days. And it was a raging success. And she took it to Europe and went to France and Germany and England. And when she came back to America, she was a star, Ruth St. Denis from Europe. But in her later years, she never actually completed. She died at 89, danced all the way up till she died. Yeah, you know, that's like you know. Anyway, I'm just getting to know her. There's a bunch of biographies on her, and I'm interested in bringing more of her spirit into the dances of universities, because it's been sort of very male-dominated type of chants and male-dominated type of dances. Okay, so we're going to do a dance, and these are her words. She liked to use nature themes, and she was famous for undulating arms and undulating midriff, which was quite radical in the days of ballet, to move your body like that. So here's how it goes. Bending with the tide and swinging with the stars. Try that bit. Bending with the tide and swinging with the stars. Beating with the hot drums and running with the wind. Beating with the And you can adapt it. In other words, you don't have to do it as dramatically as I'm going to do it, but I'm going to do it just to look like we're saying Denis. You can do it very simple and very simple moves, just whatever works well for your body. Okay, just sit there for a second. I'll show it to you first, and then we'll get up. So we go like this. We're holding hands, and we're going to bend this bit like this. Bend as if you're stepping back and curving like a tie. Watch. Bending with the tide. So just going this way and that way. We'll be holding hands. Bending with the tide. Holding hands. And swinging with the stars. We're kind of suspending like this with each other. Then we just go beating with the hot drums and running with the winds. That's it. And then all you do is hold the hands and go, we. This part's cool because you go, we are the dancers. And then we make alpine mountains. On the mountains. And we make a mountain range with our hands, right? Then we hold hands, dancing with courage and love. One little spin. We are the dancers on the mountain. And the other way, dancing with courage and joy, bending with the time. Right? So let's all stand up. Hey, Gavin. Let's hold hands. And very good. Okay. So now, if you don't, as I said, you can be as expressive as you want. But if you don't want to be that expressive, you can just step back and step forward, right? So it's easy. So here we go. Stepping back. Bending with the tide. Swing this way. And swinging with the stars. Again. Bending with the tide. And swinging with the stars. This way. Beating with the heart. Good night. And running with the wind. Again. Beating with the heart. Run out. And running with the wind. Holding hands. broken flows the rhythm for me to dance upon, and thy unvariable joy awaits my fearless feet. The words are Ema Lama, repeat.
Ema Lama.
Ika Heao. Ema Lama Ika Heao. And it means love and care for the earth. Very simple. So it goes like this. Earth and sky. Sea and stone. Hold this land in sacredness. So very nice and easy. So here's the tune, and then I'll show you the dance, and then Gavin will finish. means